Montana Territory, 1872. The sprawling acres of the Broken Spear Ranch stood like a testament to one man's determination against the unforgiving frontier. Samuel Blackett had carved his empire from wilderness with nothing but grit and the sweat of his brow. At 26, he was already the most successful rancher in Whispering Pines, his 6'3" frame and broad shoulders making him an imposing figure despite his youth. His clean-shaven face and piercing blue eyes might have made him the object of many young women's affections, but Samuel had long ago decided that the frontier was a place for survival, not romance. A man gets soft when his heart's involved, he often told his ranch hands. And soft men die out here. He believed this with unwavering conviction. After watching his parents' loving marriage end in tragedy when Blackfoot raiders attacked their homestead years before, Samuel had locked away any notion of companionship. The ranch was his life, his purpose, all he needed or wanted. The early spring morning dawned crisp and clear as Samuel stood on his porch, surveying the land that stretched before him. 50,000 acres, 200 head of cattle, and a crew of loyal men who respected him. It should have been enough. Yet lately, an emptiness had crept into his bones that not even the vastness of his domain could fill. Mr. Blackett, a ranch hand galloped toward the house, kicking up dust. That settler wagon's arrived from town. The new cook's with M. Samuel nodded. His previous cook had departed 3 weeks prior, heading east to care for an ailing mother. The ranch house had suffered in the interim. Hard-working cowboys deserved proper meals, not the burned beans and tough biscuits they'd endured lately. Show them to the main house, he instructed, straightening his vest. At least this was a problem he could solve. The settler wagon rumbled up, accompanied by his foreman, Hank. A slender figure in a faded blue dress stepped down, clutching a worn carpet bag. 22-year-old Emma Grayson stood before him, honey blonde hair escaping from beneath a simple bonnet, her green eyes appraising the ranch with quiet assessment. Despite the dust of travel, her beauty was unmistakable, though Samuel barely noted it. To him, she was simply a solution to his kitchen problem. "Miss Grayson," Samuel said with a curt nod. "Welcome to Broken Spear." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Blackett." Her voice held a soft Virginia lilt. "I'm grateful for the position." "Can you cook?" he asked bluntly. A flicker of something, pride, perhaps, crossed her face. "Yes, sir. I managed the kitchen at my uncle's boarding house back east before." She paused. "Before circumstances brought me west." Samuel didn't inquire further. Everyone in the frontier carried stories they'd rather not tell. "You'll have Sundays off. The bunkhouse feeds 15 men, and I take my meals in the main house. You'll be provided room and board plus $10 monthly." She nodded, accepting his terms without negotiation. "Hank will show you to your quarters," Samuel concluded, already turning away. "Supper's at 6. That evening, Samuel sat alone at his large dining table, cutting into a perfectly cooked steak. The potatoes were seasoned with herbs he didn't recognize, and fresh biscuits sat steaming in a cloth-lined basket. He'd almost forgotten what a proper meal tasted like. Emma entered quietly from the kitchen, carrying a blackberry cobbler. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Blackett?" "No," he said, then added reluctantly. The meal was satisfactory. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Thank you, sir." As she turned to leave, Samuel noticed her wince slightly, her hand moving unconsciously to her ribcage. "Are you injured, Miss Grayson?" "No, sir. Just tired from the journey." She slipped back into the kitchen before he could question further. For 2 weeks, Emma proved herself invaluable. The ranch hands praised her cooking, morale improved, and even Samuel found himself looking forward to mealtimes. He told himself it was merely appreciation for good food, nothing more. One sweltering afternoon, Samuel returned early from checking fence lines. Entering through the kitchen to fetch water, he found Emma reaching high for a jar of preserves, her sleeve falling back to reveal dark, finger-shaped bruises circling her wrist. She turned at his entrance, quickly tugging her sleeve down. "Mr. Blackett, I wasn't expecting you until supper." Samuel's jaw tightened. "What happened to your arm?" "Nothing of consequence," she answered too quickly. "Miss Grayson," his voice was low but firm, "I won't ask again." Emma lowered her eyes. "It's nothing, truly. I'm simply clumsy." Samuel stepped closer, noticing how she instinctively backed away. Those marks were made by a man's hand. For a moment, it seemed she might deny it again, but instead, tears welled in her eyes. "Please, I need this position." "I cannot." A crash from outside interrupted her. Shouts followed, and Samuel strode to the door. A commotion had broken out in the yard, a stranger on horseback, arguing with his foreman. "Where is she?" the man demanded, swaying slightly in his saddle. Even from a distance, Samuel could tell he was drunk. "I know my wife came this way." Emma gasped behind him, her face draining of color. "Joseph," she whispered, terror evident in her voice. "Your husband?" Samuel asked sharply. She shook her head frantically. "No. He claims we're married, but it's not true. I fled my uncle's boarding house when Joseph became insistent." Understanding dawned. The bruises. Her desperate journey west. The circumstances that had brought her to Montana. "Stay inside," Samuel ordered, stepping into the yard. The stranger, Joseph, spotted him immediately. "You the owner here?" "I've come for my property." "Emma Grayson. She's promised to me." "There's no one here by that name," Samuel replied evenly, though his blood boiled at the word property. "Liar," Joseph spat. "The stagecoach driver said she took a position at Broken Spear. Whoever you're looking for isn't here. Now ride out before my men show you the way." Joseph narrowed his bloodshot eyes. "I'll be back. And with the sheriff. Hiding a woman from her rightful husband is against the law." "Then bring the sheriff," Samuel challenged. "I welcome it." After Joseph departed, hurling threats, Samuel found Emma trembling in the kitchen. "He'll return," she said, wringing her hands. "He always does. I should leave. I've brought trouble to your door." Samuel studied her pale face, the fear in her eyes, and something protective rose in him that he hadn't felt in years. "No, this is my land. No one dictates terms to me here. You don't understand. Joseph has powerful friends. He'll convince the sheriff." "Sheriff Davis is a fair man who despises bullies," Samuel interrupted. "But more importantly, you're under my protection now. No one touches what's mine." As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized how possessive they sounded. "My employees," he amended awkwardly. "No one harms my employees." For the first time since her arrival, Emma smiled genuinely. "Thank you, Mr. Blackett." That night, Samuel sat on his porch long after dark, rifle across his lap. The incident had stirred something in him, not just anger at Joseph's brutality, but a deeper question about his own isolation. Had he been wrong all these years, believing that emotional connections were weaknesses? The fierce protectiveness he felt toward Emma seemed to strengthen rather than diminish him. True to his word, Joseph returned the next day with Sheriff Davis. Samuel met them in the yard, standing tall before his assembled ranch hands. "Samuel," the sheriff greeted him. "This man claims you're harboring his betrothed." "I harbor no man's betrothed," Samuel replied. "I employ a cook named Emma Grayson, who has informed me she has no husband nor fiancé." "She's lying," Joseph snarled. "We had an understanding with her uncle." "An understanding isn't marriage," Sheriff Davis pointed out. "Where are your papers?" Joseph's face reddened. "We ain't had time for papers yet." "But then you have no claim," the sheriff interrupted. "Miss Grayson is free to work wherever she chooses." "This isn't over," Joseph hissed as they departed. Over the following weeks, something shifted between Samuel and Emma. Their conversations extended beyond the necessary, lingering after meals as she shared stories of Virginia, and he spoke of his dreams for the ranch. Her laughter brought warmth to rooms that had known only silence. Samuel found himself inventing reasons to be near the kitchen, and the fortress around his heart began to crack. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the mountains gold, Emma spoke of her past. "My parents died of fever when I was 16, she said softly. "My uncle took me in, but viewed me as an investment. When Joseph began frequenting the boarding house, offering to clear my uncle's gambling debts in exchange for my hand." She shuddered. "I refused, but Joseph wouldn't accept rejection. The bruises began after he caught me alone one evening." Samuel's hands clenched. "No man has the right. In Virginia, men like Joseph always get what they want eventually. That's why I fled west." Emma looked up at him. "I've never told anyone before." "I'm honored by your trust," Samuel said, surprised to find he meant it. Trust had always seemed dangerous to him, a luxury the frontier couldn't afford. Yet here it was, offered freely, and he found himself wanting to reciprocate. My parents were deeply in love, he admitted. When the raiders came, my father died trying to protect my mother. I was 14, hiding in the root cellar as they were slaughtered. I always believed their love was what killed them, that if my father had been thinking clearly instead of emotionally, we might have escaped together. Emma's hand covered his. Love didn't kill them, Samuel. Violence did. And your father's love might have given him the courage to buy you time to survive. Her words struck him with the force of revelation. For 12 years, he'd blamed love for his loss, never considering it might have been love that saved him. The summer days stretched long and golden. Samuel found himself living for moments with Emma, her smile when he brought wildflowers from the range, their conversations beneath starlit skies, the way she hummed while working. The ranch hands exchanged knowing glances as their boss found increasingly flimsy reasons to be near the kitchen. In late August, the annual Founders' Day dance approached. Samuel had never attended, despite being the largest landowner in the county. This year, however, he found himself asking Emma if she would accompany him. As your employee, she asked, eyes guarded. As my guest, he clarified, heart hammering unfamiliarly. As the woman he faltered, and used to expressing feelings. Yes, she said, saving him from his awkwardness. I'd like that very much. The night of the dance arrived clear and mild. Samuel waited nervously in his best suit as Emma emerged in a simple but becoming dress of deep blue, her honey blonde hair swept up elegantly. You look beautiful, he said, offering his arm. And you're quite handsome when you're not scowling at your cattle, she teased, a newfound confidence in her manner. The entire town turned to stare when Samuel Blackett entered the dance with Emma Grayson on his arm. For most, it was the first time they'd seen the serious rancher smile. They danced beneath paper lanterns, Samuel surprising everyone with his grace. Emma fit perfectly in his arms, as though she'd always belonged there. People are watching us, she whispered. Let them, he replied. I've been a fool for too long. I don't care who knows it. As midnight approached, Samuel led Emma outside into the cool night air. Under a canopy of stars, he finally spoke the truth that had been growing in his heart. I was wrong about the frontier, he said softly. It's not just about survival. It's about building something worth surviving for. He took her hands in his. You've shown me that, Emma. Before she could respond, a familiar voice slurred from the shadows. Touching. Joseph stepped forward, reeking of whiskey, a revolver in his unsteady hand. Followed you all the way from Virginia, Emma. Thought you could just disappear. Samuel moved protectively in front of her. You're drunk, and you're trespassing. Walk away while you still can. Not without what's mine. Joseph leveled the gun. Step aside, rancher. She was never yours, Samuel replied evenly. Then neither of you gets to live. Joseph's finger tightened on the trigger. Samuel lunged forward just as the gun fired. Pain seared through his shoulder, but momentum carried him into Joseph. They crashed to the ground, struggling for control of the weapon. Despite his injury, Samuel's strength prevailed. He pinned Joseph down as townspeople rushed out, Sheriff Davis among them. Take him, Samuel growled, rising unsteadily to his feet. Blood soaked his shirt, but his only concern was Emma, who ran to him with tears streaming down her face. You could have been killed, she sobbed, pressing her handkerchief to his wound. For you, he said simply. It was worth the risk. The shooting and subsequent arrest of Joseph Finch became the scandal of Whispering Pines. More shocking still was Samuel Blackett's public declaration as he stood before the town council 2 weeks later, arm in a sling, Emma beside him. This man threatened my future wife on public property, he stated firmly. I expect the full penalty of the law. Gasps rippled through the assembled crowd at the word wife. Emma looked up at him in astonishment. That is, Samuel added more quietly, for her ears alone, if you'll have me. The town council sentenced Joseph to 5 years in territorial prison for attempted murder. As he was led away, Samuel and Emma stood together, unbroken. That evening, beneath a harvest moon, Samuel took Emma to his favorite ridge overlooking the ranch. I've been alone so long, he confessed, convinced that love was a luxury the West couldn't afford, that needing someone made you vulnerable. He touched her cheek gently. But standing between you and that gun, I've never felt stronger or more certain. Emma leaned into his touch. I came west looking for safety, never dreaming I'd find a home. I was wrong about everything, Samuel said. The frontier isn't just harsh, it's beautiful too. And surviving isn't enough without someone to share it with. He lowered himself carefully to one knee, mindful of his healing shoulder. Emma Grayson, will you build a life with me here? Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children someday? Tears shimmered in her eyes. Yes, Samuel. 1,000 times yes. They married in October, with autumn painting the mountains in fiery colors. The entire town attended, marveling at the transformation of the once solitary rancher. Where there had been coldness, now there was warmth. Where there had been isolation, now there was community. 6 months later, as spring returned to Montana territory, Samuel added a nursery to the ranch house. As Emma's belly swelled with their first child, they would often sit together on the porch at dusk, his arm around her shoulders, watching their legacy grow. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked one evening. Risking everything for me. Samuel looked out over the land that had once been his only love, then back to the woman who had taught him there was room in his heart for so much more. The only thing I regret is all the years I spent believing I had to choose between strength and love. He placed his hand over hers on her growing belly. The truth was, I couldn't truly have either until I embraced both. As twilight settled over Broken Spear Ranch, Samuel Blackett, once the loneliest man in the territory, held his whole world in his arms, finally understanding that the frontier's greatest gift wasn't land or cattle or independence. It was the courage to build something lasting in a place where nothing came easy, especially love.